Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb, and we are broadcasting live, as always, from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corn. Kind of a rainy morning. Let's start. We're going to get into Michigan in just a second. First, a message from yesterday's program from a viewer. Hello, Frank. Hello. Just wanted to thank you for sharing Nick Langworthy's video because it was spot on. And anyone who has a soul has to agree with this message. And that was in reference to his statement on the murder of Laken Riley. We may get to that topic a little bit later on. I do want to jump right into Michigan, though. Gallup released a poll just yesterday saying that immigration has surged to the top of the most important problems list. We've had similar polls for you recently, but it all ties in. So thank you for that comment. If you're new to the program, you see the number on the bottom of your screen. We've already received one virtual wave. You can reach out at any time and weigh in on, well, let's start with this. Yesterday's results. What did you think? I know the common trend, and Nikki Haley's been saying it frequently, is that Donald Trump isn't getting, look at all these, isn't getting in the percentage that he should as a quote-unquote incumbent. That has been kind of a common talking point in the media, as well as Nikki Haley supporters. We'll get to that in just a second. But Biden, let's start there, because there was that anti-Israel, quote-unquote, uncommitted movement where people were saying, vote uncommitted. Don't vote for Biden to show that you are not happy with his stance on Israel. And of course, we've seen that Biden has been very concerned about this, why he is wavering on his support, why he made sure to go on that late night program and say that he believes a ceasefire could happen over the weekend for Ramadan as soon as Monday, hoping to secure that vote. Now, I wouldn't say it was a huge protest vote with 13% uncommitted so far. There's still areas, as of this reporting from the news media, that were coming in. But uncommitted received 13% of the vote, far below the benchmark set in 2008's Michigan Democrat primary, when close to 40% of the electorate opted to not back any candidate. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. A couple things that I find interesting about this. When you look at the numbers of Nikki Haley, Nikki Haley received about, 27%. They're saying that that's a signal that the former president has no chance in the general. I guess I would say I'm confused by that argument for a couple different reasons. Yes, there are definitely people there still voting for Nikki Haley, that are just not going to vote for Trump in the general election. But then we also have to remember that Nikki Haley has had a major Democrat backing, a major in various states where this is allowed to switch parties, or if you're an independent, vote for her. So I'm not really sure that's as much of a concern as people are letting on. But also, and I think some of us can relate, and I'm not going to name names but of past candidates, but I'm sure you've went in to vote in the primary and voted for who you wanted, knowing full well they probably weren't going to be the nominee, and then in the general election voting for who the Republican or Democrat nominee is, depending on your preference. For instance, I would give you an example of Bernie Sanders, let's say. A lot of people voted for Bernie Sanders, and even though the fix was essentially in and he stood no chance of winning, Hillary Clinton, receiving the nomination, still got quite a bit of support from Bernie voters. Same goes with Biden. So I don't think that means that you're necessarily, that all those people that are voting for Hillary saying, I'm never, ever going to vote for Trump. Yeah, there's some, again, Democrat and independents. I don't think it means necessarily that some won't, at the end of the day, say, I'm still voting for the Republican. Some Nikki Haley supporters have even said that as much in the media. Major supporters. So anyway, a little bit on the side note there. And we're going to talk about that more in depth. But what the media is saying, oh, wow, I'm already running late. Great. The takeaways from the primary, according to CNN, is November warning signs for Biden and Trump. For Biden and Trump. They also say Well, it says for Trump, the roughly 30% of Republicans who voted either for former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley or on the GOP's uncommitted line might be more difficult to parse. Though his third presidential nomination in 3 tries could be clinched in a few weeks, the fact remains that a sizable group of Republicans are either firmly opposed to him or still to be won over, including in a state that he won by a sliver in 2016 and then lost to Biden by roughly 150,000 votes 4 years later. But what I've got to ask here is, again, before we go to break, the ones that they say are maybe not convinced yet. At the end of the day, unless it's one of the Democrat or independent voters, when I say Democrat, switching over, whatever state we're talking about, unless it's one of those people, if you're a Republican, are you as a Republican going to say, I don't want Trump to win so bad, I'm going to vote for Biden, or I'm going to stay home? That's the question that they're asking. I would pose that same question to you and ask where you think these numbers lead in the general. Is this the dire warning for Trump that we're hearing so frequently from Nikki Haley, who has yet to win a state? The uncommitted campaign against Biden, they are claiming success with the 13%. By the way, what happened to Dean Phillips? Dean Phillips lost to Marianne Williamson, and Marianne Williamson's not even in the race anymore. Marianne Williamson got 3% to Dean Phillips, who's still in the race at 2.8%. CNN continues, time is running out for Haley. Yes, as we know. Well, I am running late. We'll talk more about this. There's no sense rushing right out of the gate. Stay with us. We're just getting started here on Frankly Speaking. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So we're talking about Michigan being yesterday. They said the time is running out for Haley at CNN, that because many contests award delegates on a winner-take-all basis, close calls won't help Haley keep the pace. Well, tell me where those close calls are. Here's what I'm confused by the argument that, and it was Haley who was saying that to be as competitive as possible, that she needed to win this close. She lost by a lot. The closest she's ever come was 11-point loss in New Hampshire. But the argument that they're making is that Trump can't win because he's not winning by even bigger margins in the primaries. So what would the answer be in that scenario? Is the answer to that, and this is a question I pose to you, if we use that line of reasoning, is the answer to drop Trump and go for the person that hasn't been able to win the primary because they don't have as much Republican support, and then we're supposed to trust the poll numbers of the media that never wants to see a Republican win again, a media that has been trying to prop up Haley's campaign to defeat Trump? The line of reasoning doesn't work in my head, and that's why I reach out the question to you and hope that you'll reach out to me. But yes, her time is running short. Then, and CNN mentioned this as well, the disappearing Dean Phillips. His best hope last night was to avoid finishing fourth in what was essentially a 2-person primary. Marianne Williamson had dropped out, though she ended up with more votes than Dean Phillips. Wow. And then we've got this is going to be interesting, the GOP contest on Saturday in Michigan. This is where delegates are awarded at a state convention on Saturday. It will be very interesting if they don't go with the will of the voters. Now, I'm not saying that they will do that. It will just be interesting to see how that all plays out at the end of the day. Because if you look at it, only 16 of Michigan's 55 delegates to the RNC were at stake yesterday. The rest will be awarded at a state party convention Saturday. That'll be interesting because then you're going to see some outrage. So anyway, that's your quick overview of last night. Now you're starting to see some pieces, and I don't know the end game for this, but like Stephen Collinson, Biden has 8 months to fix his Michigan problem. Other comments that some worrying signs for Joe Biden. Are they pushing for that idea of him dropping out? I'm not really sure. This is not typical of the media. I think Stephen Collinson's article, Biden has 8 months to fix his Michigan problem, is more of a warning, again, that we've seen time and time again from the media to the Biden campaign, that they better switch their stance on Israel, that they better weaken in their stance on Israel, which we're starting to see, mind you. So it could be working. Even largely uncontested primary elections can identify weakness in an incumbent presidential appeal. The Michigan result will only bolster questions about the solidarity of Biden's coalition and the enthusiasm of key Democratic voting blocs, including minority voters, young voters, and progressives, who are among those that have reacted most viscerally to scenes of carnage in Gaza. So that's another quick piece. And that's why David Axelrod said, and this is in full disclosure, before the results were in, David Axelrod, Obama's former advisor, saying, obviously there are a fair number of voters who wanted to make that vote, meaning the uncommitted vote. And I would also stress we saw the Ann Arbor vote. This is an issue not just with the Arab American community, but it's an issue with younger voters, which is a problem nationally for Biden, motivating these young voters and some African American voters. So I think this is clearly an issue. Again, this is about Biden's support for Israel. Quote, I think it's one of the reasons why he was eager to say yesterday he thought that a ceasefire was in reach. So again, what we're seeing with Israel and Gaza is more looked at through the prism of what's best for the Biden campaign. I did not realize this before we take our next break, that there were 33 protesters arrested during Biden's New York City late night taping, that late night with Seth. I continue to forget his name because I don't watch the program. Seth Meyers. And it was all in support of a ceasefire. There's a very interesting strain of kind of this anti-Israel sentiment that I think is more prevalent that the media is even letting on. But with our last little piece here on Biden, some very worrying signs for Joe Biden. A depressed vote is not Biden's only concern. So too are fears that former President Donald Trump's improved poll numbers with black and Latino voters might indicate the real potential for the GOP to cut into traditional Democrat constituencies. But is this fatal? No, it's not. There's considerable time between now and November. The situation in the Middle East is dynamic, and it is possible the frustration and anger, which are very much in play today, won't be as much a priority for voters come Election Day, says Julian Zelzer at CNN. All right, there we go. That was quick overview of the Biden side of this. We're going to go to the Trump side of things. We have other issues to get to as well. The redistricting in New York. We've got a lot to cover. Not a lot of time to get there, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. We are running late this morning. I knew it would be that kind of morning. So I wanted to mention this before we go any further. Don't forget, our good friends at the Painted Post Food Pantry are holding the nutrition workshop. It's today. I've been bringing this to your attention. We talked about it with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano as he and I took a tour of the food pantry and just the amazing work that they do with such a small setup. Well, today is a nutrition workshop. It includes a 35 to 40-minute lesson, a recipe demonstration with samples, and a free kitchen tool for every participant. Lessons, recipes, and kitchen tools are different every time. It is the fourth Wednesday of every month. Well, guess what? That is today from 10:30 to 11:30 at the United Church of Painted Post, 201 North Hamilton Street in Painted Post. So do not forget about that. All right, back to Michigan. I mean, I don't see any other way but to call it a landslide. Former President Donald Trump ran away in Michigan, cruising past Nikki Haley to secure his sixth consecutive win in the GOP contest. But again, and by the way, we had quite a few comments on this, and I'll just kind of paraphrase them all together, where the media keeps telling us that the only way Republicans can win is candidate X. Let's go back through history. Most recently, I remember it with Jeb Bush. When I say most recently, put Nikki Haley aside for a second. But Jeb Bush, right? Jeb Bush is the only one that can beat Hillary Clinton. And it was Romney, can only beat Obama. And then it was McCain. And don't think for a moment, for those that maybe have never taken this in, don't think for a moment that isn't part of what led to the rise of the Donald Trump presidency. Was Republicans were fed up with being told, just go along and get along. Listen to the talking heads on the media. Listen to people like Bill Kristol, who never get any prediction right, never gets any of their political advice right. Listen to people like that. Because if we're more moderate, if we're more in the middle, if we're more maybe even a Democrat, we're going to win this darn thing. And then we, of course, lose every time that is tried. So, again, that's why I think, and Nikki Haley, before all this, I think many of us said, oh, she seems like a good candidate, has a really bright future. She's went a kind of a different direction in the meantime on that, and I know that's angered a lot of people with getting support from Democrats and the like. And I know she's trying to win this thing. I get it, but I don't think it bodes well for her future in the Republican Party. But she saw herself as the alternative to Trump, and I just don't think that's there yet at a time when people are seeing, you add it all together, whether it's the trials against Trump. Actually, we're going to get to a piece on this later on, so I don't have to keep going with my thoughts on it. But the trials, the attacks from day one of his presidency, and actually before, when he came down, they escalated to announce. The list goes on, and I think the media still has yet to recognize that. And there's a piece I hope we have a chance to get to, by Michael Goodwin in the Post called "The Obvious Reason Behind Trump's Undying Political Strength is Somehow Still Dumbfounding Ignorant Big Media Elites." So we'll get to that in a moment, but we still have a lot more to look at. This text message galore. Wow. We still have more to look at with Michigan. So with about 2/3 of the expected vote counted as of early Wednesday, Trump had 68.1% compared to Nikki Haley's 26.7%. The former president has now defeated Haley by double digits in 5 states and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Trump saying in his victory call, "I just wanted to thank everybody. You've been so incredible. The numbers are far greater than we even anticipated. We win Michigan, we win the whole thing." Noting that November, quote, "cannot come fast enough." Now, Haley's campaign spokeswoman, Olivia Perez-Cubas, argued that losing about 35% of the vote should serve as a flashing warning sign for Trump in November. And this is my hang-up now recently. Because, again, I have in the past voted for Republicans in the primary, and I know it's New York State, but still, bear with me. And it's anecdotal, I understand. But I think we can all say this at some point, and please feel free to disagree, where you voted for the candidate you wanted, even knowing they might not get the nomination, and then come nomination time, you may, for a cliche term, hold your nose for the candidate that was selected. So I don't understand why all of a sudden it is, and by the way, it's not 30%. Or 35%, as Haley's spokesperson said. It was 26.7%. I don't think that means that 26.7% is never, ever, ever going to vote for Trump no matter what. Also, I'm the Democrat and independents. I go back to that, but I'm talking about the Republicans. I don't think that that's some type of set in stone logic, as a matter of fact. I think it's quite the opposite, but maybe I'm missing something here. Perez-Cubas continued, "Let this serve as another warning sign that what has happened in Michigan will continue to play out across the country. So long as Donald Trump is at the top of the ticket, Republicans will keep losing to the socialist left. Our children deserve better." Okay. So again, the logic here is we drop the person who's been winning by double digits in every single state to support the candidate that has yet to win a state and lost by double digits, even in her own home state, because the media and polling companies tell us that she's the only way we can beat Biden. I just want to make sure that I understand that, because the polling firms and the media who never want to see a Republican win are where we head to now. Because, boy, that is reminiscent of McCain, Romney, right? Jeb. I don't know. But I know that's Nikki Haley's campaign points, and I understand that. I'm not taking away from that. But if you recall, just on yesterday, Haley refused to define what a loss would look like in Michigan, saying she wanted to be competitive. Quote, "I will continue to say our goal is to be competitive. It's always been to be competitive. And if you're getting 40% in all the early states, that's making a point." Well, she's not. I mean, I like how they generously round up. In this case, she got 26.7% to Trump's 68.1%. Did you realize, before we take another break, because I'm going to ramble on a lot this morning, it's the kind of morning we're having, and we have so many great comments I'm going to read when we come back from break. But do you realize Nikki Haley has wasted over $76 million to defeat Donald Trump in 4 primary states: Michigan, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and Iowa. Wow. Think of that, how that money could have been used. Oh, I don't know, maybe for a Republican. And in this case, it looks like Donald Trump to defeat Biden. Now, yes, I know this is heavy on the one side of this morning. But we talked about Biden in the beginning. We talked about what the statement says there, that the kind of anti-Biden vote didn't really pan out, even though they're claiming victory, did not really pan out. That's the group that is not happy with Biden's stance on Israel. So I'd love to have you weigh in on that. We've got some comments coming in, so stay with us. Let's take another short break, and we'll be back with Frankly Speaking after this. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. You're overlooking that exact studio on our roof cam. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. Let's go through some of these comments. I like this one. And this kind of plays along with the Nikki Haley mindset in this, and her campaign's mindset, and those in the media that drop the front runner, go for the underdog, because the media tells us that's the best way to go. How about this? This is from a viewer, I always vote for underdogs. Vote RFK Jr. See, we show everything on this program. And I know I don't get to everybody's comments, but I do appreciate it when we have an opportunity to read them. We haven't heard a lot from RFK Jr. I'm not getting on this tangent, I know. But after that Super Bowl ad that I think was so effective and the media went after him, I think they started to realize it could be a scenario, let's not cover him at all. It's probably better than giving him free coverage. But I'll continue. Another viewer writes, Dear Frank, your logic is impeccable. Easiest way to get on Frankly Speaking. Send me a compliment. My belief is that any polling and prognostications from the legacy media or the Democrats is put out there to try and push the sheeple in a direction that will benefit the Democrats. I will say, and you've heard me say a million times on this program, when the media starts saying they really like a Republican candidate, that's when the hair stands up on the back of my neck and the red flags start going up, where it's, why do you care now what's best for the Republican Party? Thank you for that, by the way. Keep those comments coming in. Oh, here we go. Here's another comment. Nice one. Happy to hear this discussion, Frank, because I've been so confused by Nikki's constant messaging that Trump can't beat Biden and that she is the only one that can, but think it's just her posturing. And if you tell the lie long enough, eventually it sticks. Well, that is the theory, that eventually it'll stick. It's not doing so well this time with her. But I think, and I don't think it's a lie. I mean, I think when you look at it, she believes the polling. She believes that she is kind of the answer to Republicans that don't want Trump in there. I just go back to the question. I'd ask this of anybody out there. If you're not a Trump supporter, please, I'd love to hear from you. If you are a Trump supporter, anybody, RFK supporters, we heard earlier, Biden supporter, I would love to hear your take on that. If you ever, whatever party you're involved in, went to a primary, presidential or elsewise, and went in and voted for someone you like, that person ultimately doesn't get the nomination. And have you not voted? Have you voted for the Democrat or Independent or Republican or whatever the opposite of your party is? I don't think that that's a solid, 30%, not even 26.1% that is not going to vote necessarily for Trump. Now, yes, there are going to be some. She has been very good at courting independents and Democrats. 26.7%. Sorry, we always try to be accurate on this program. So are those 26.7% a definite guaranteed no? And you're saying, well, what if even 10%? Then what's the answer if we use that logic? Again, we pose this question to you. This I mentioned before we take our next break. Michael Goodwin says, it's not my habit to read Paul Krugman's articles, much less recommend them, but every dog has his day. And Krugman's latest piece commands attention because of what he inadvertently reveals about the elite ignorance. Under the headline, this is his article by Paul Krugman, The Mystery of White Rural Rage. The New York Times columnist approvingly cites a book that details the decline of rural America. Spoiler alert, technology gets all the blame. But Krugman, an economist, and I say that loosely and I put it in quotes, quickly adds, I still don't get the politics of rural Americans, and later writes, I still find it hard to understand recent voting patterns. What he means, of course, is that nearly 9 years after the Donald Trump that came down the escalator to launch his first campaign, Krugman still hasn't figured out the source of the former president's enduring political strength among people living in what media masters call flyover America. Yes, he still doesn't get why Trump was so successful with his forgotten men and women speech, that he's doing this for you. Listen, you might not like it, but that's what was so successful. And Krugman can't get his mind around it because he's in a bubble. He's in a media elite bubble, a liberal bubble. It's as simple as that. And that's what really cost them back in 2016. Obviously, 2020 is such a different type of race that I find it hard to believe that people in the media, well, I don't find it hard to believe. I find that people that know politics that look at that and say this is what's going to happen. We're going to take from that into what happens this year, because it was in the middle of COVID. There were so many external factors. It's kind of like when I said don't look at the Santos seat as a sign of things to come, because Swazi won it as a former congressman in that district. There was a snowstorm. There's so many different factors. Those type of things, will they play out this November? Could be. It seems unlikely, not saying that the outcome could be different. I'm not sure what the outcome's going to be. If I did, I'd be making some crazy money in some political party in Washington telling them what to do. But you've got to take it a little bit different in 2020. I don't think, that's why I've said numerous times, that Biden can campaign like he did in 2020 in his basement. But I'll continue. I'm sorry. Willful ignorance is the only way to explain Krugman's bizarre claims, which include that New York is a relatively safe city compared to the hellscapes of rural America. That's Krugman's mindset. How many times do you think Krugman's hanging out rural America? He also ridicules the idea that illegal immigration, wokeness, and the deep state are real problems, blaming nearly every rural ill on technology. He concludes by declaring that white rural rage is arguably the single greatest threat facing American democracy. So there you have it. There's his thoughts on news. It's very similar to the Hillary Clinton line of deplorables, right, that will live in infamy. In fairness, it's not just leftists who are confused by Trump's remarkable comeback. Nikki Haley, same kind of thing. She believed she was going to be the new generation of Republicans. Did not work. It is more than a footnote that her campaign has been kept afloat in large part by Democrat voters and donors. Exactly. And all the wannabes discovered that Trump's GOP base has essentially doubled since the start of 2023, from the mid-30s to now 75%. And that goes because of, the indictments, what the former president would be calling a witch hunt. Polls also show, and the media brings this up begrudgingly occasionally, that support among black and Latino voters in the population at large, he's gained support there. Against that backdrop, Krugman's ignorance strikes me as especially revealing, says Michael Goodwin. At this late stage of the Trump era, there's no mystery, only an arrogant refusal to accept truths that don't fit neatly into a blinkered worldview. Most of the left still believes America would thrive if it only traded its patriotic and cultural distinctions for the warm embrace of globalist institutions, and that anybody who rejects that vision is stupid. Recall that after Trump's stunning 2016 victory over Clinton, the editor and publisher of The Gray Lady, the New York Times, wrote a mea culpa letter to subscribers conceding their failure to realize Trump could win. And then he goes on to talk about, because we're out of time, but, the indictments. I mean, no former president has ever been indicted, but Trump's been hit 4 times. The leftist media have been cheerleaders for all 4 cases, and the civil ones too, including the outrageous show trial concocted by Letitia James and a Gong Show judge. Once again, the hatred for all things Trump has blinded them to the impact the cases are having on the electorate. Rather than scare away most of the GOP and independent voters, the cases are drawing supporters to him. And we've talked about this before. There's a lot of people out there who may be voting for Nikki Haley who say, I don't like Trump that much. I don't. But I really hate the attacks on him and the Democrat Party, essentially, and the media telling me who I can and cannot vote for, taking Trump off the ballot, etc. In large part, that's because all have been brought by the Democratic prosecutors, effectively confirming the weaponization of law enforcement argument. And then he goes through and talks about Biden and the rest. It's a really great piece, and I wish we had time to go through it more. He talks about Biden's immigration policy. But he could reverse the executive orders that he used to cause the problem in the first place, meaning the open porous borders that Biden is dealing with now. Even if he does nothing, Biden will get Paul Krugman's vote. That's only fair because listening to the big media elite is how he screwed up his presidency in the first place. Let's take our next break. Stay with us. Comments flowing in, and I appreciate it. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Thank you again for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We mentioned earlier that there's some concern by Biden supporters, Biden's team, that Trump is making headway in the black and Latino voting community, that's a major concern for them, and they begrudgingly bring it up. But also, if you recall, they keep bringing up that young people may not be enthused to vote for Biden because of what they call Genocide Joe. They don't like his stance on Israel, and it's unfortunate, but it should come as no concern as we see what is being taught on college campuses. Ever since the October 7th attack, many of us knew about it before, about what the universities were teaching their students. Now we see it in full force. So it should come as no surprise. So how about this? And I'm posing this question for you, and it comes directly from the New York Times. The headline reads, "Should the voting age be lowered to 16? New Jersey's largest city will allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in school board elections. Would expanding voting rights empower young people and improve our political system?" Yes, if I know there's one thing that I've always said, at 16, I could definitely improve our political system. At 16, I really should be making those very sage decisions to help the future of this country. But why are they asking this question now? Isn't that kind of, I don't know, humorous? Do you think the voting age should be lowered to 16? Now, the government in general tells us 16-year-olds can't buy cigarettes, can't buy cigars, can't buy tobacco products in general. You have to be, or vape, you have to be 21. You can't drink until you're 21. You can sign up for the military at 18. But at 16, you should be making the decisions that affect, well, essentially the world, even local elections. How many 16-year-olds, this is not painting with a broad brush. How many 16-year-olds know what's going on with their local towns, municipalities? Because voting's voting, right? Same with, why do you think they're allowing it for the school board elections? Do you think students in school are going to vote for bigger budgets if they're told that it's going to be better for them, better school lunches, better after-school programs? The fact that they're presenting this is quite humorous. And do you believe the 16-year-olds would vote? I believe that you would have it. It would be a voting block. Representative Grace Meng, a New York Democrat, has introduced legislation in Washington to lower the voting age for all elections nationwide to 16, a proposal that has yet to gain widespread public support. So I'm asking the question to you. Do you think lowering the age to 16 is a wise decision? Let's take another short break. Keep those waves coming in. Thank you, everybody. Keep the comments coming in as well. Please feel free. Do you believe, let me ask you this way. Do you think it should be lowered to 16, or do you believe at 16 you were of the mindset that you could have made the right vote? Would you have voted an informed vote? Would you have voted to spite your parents' vote? As one viewer says, they want the 16-year-old vote because they're a captive audience for them to influence. Hence, what we've seen so often in the school system, and what we're unfortunately seeing now with this strain of anti-Semitism, and what is really a kind of an indoctrination from the education system with certain political beliefs, certain political narratives. So it doesn't come as a surprise this is happening now. Just something to keep your mind on, to worry you even more. Let's take another short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I asked a question before break. Should the voting age be lowered to 16? Because that's what the New York Times is suggesting. And I asked, do you think you would have been a good voter at 16? This coming from a viewer. and it made me laugh. I do have to admit on this one, it made me laugh. I would have voted for Gus Hall. Remember Gus Hall? Ran for president under the Communist Party, about a half a dozen times. Oh my gosh, we got so many great voice messages coming in. I was laughing about the Gas Hall. That's a funny question. Okay, we got some funny comments that I'm not going to read on the air. These are okay. I shouldn't do this. That's poor media etiquette 101. We're getting some funny comments that I may just avoid here for a moment. Okay, this is fair. Just got done packing my 17-year-old's lunch. As she turns 18, she's wondering why she is trusted to vote, but not to buy alcohol and really do any, quote, adult things. I guess you don't need full mental capacity to vote or be president now. Yeah, well, of course we know that at one point it was 21. 18, I mean, she couldn't buy alcohol. She couldn't buy, even cigarettes are now 21. That's a very good point. Thank you for those comments. And yes, I do believe if you see some, younger people, 16-year-olds, to paraphrase what some people were saying at some of the maybe fast food restaurants you go to, and you maybe get your order, and you look at that order and you wonder what the heck happened. Maybe that's a sign that maybe it's. I understand. I'm not trying to pick on 16-year-olds here. What I will say, personally, I don't think I would have made great decisions as 16, and I was very politically active. I was out campaigning for people at that point, and doing what part I could at 16 years old. I just don't think, it's basically saying vote for president. Because how many 16-year-olds would be looking forward to going to vote for town council, city council, mayor, executive, whatever the case may be. It's all about getting that vote at the presidential level. Here, 16-year-olds voting makes as much sense as voting for Biden, says one viewer. I have adult acquaintances that can't tell me who Pelosi and others are and what foreign policy is. That's a great point about adults. I'm not going to be one of these people that said, well, you should have a test before. I'm not saying that at all. But it is amazing some of the people that I find in my life that are most, now I'm not saying politically active, most politically angry about something, are also the ones that do have to pause and say, wait, what about this candidate that you're mentioning or this politician? What party are they in? Before they can tell you if they're angry at what you said or not. And I've had that happen on numerous occasions, so I will agree with that. We've got so many comments coming in, but because some of them got very funny, I'm going to take a break and read them and proofread them before we go back on with them. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on Big Fox. We are back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. No music. That's how quick we've got to be this morning. All right, comments from viewers. This has been a great show for comments. First one, viewer. Liberals wake up each morning looking for a new way to cheat. Voting at 16 is one of those ways. Next comment. I'm out of order here. Can't buy alcohol or cigarettes at 16, but the New York bud shops, the marijuana shops, the illegal sticker stores, will sell them weed. I'm sure that's probably the case. So I will say legally, even though those stores aren't legal. Legally, I think you had to be 21 at that as well. Here's another comment. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. Don't you think that by giving 16-year-olds a vote, it would give their parents the opportunity to say, you live under our roof, we feed you, we clothe you, you vote the way we tell you? Yeah, I think it might have, yes, I mean, that is a great opportunity to what you would say to your child, I'm sure. But I also think it's I am going to vote for this candidate to spite my parents. Or, these adults that tell me, because somehow the media's been really great at telling you that, it's almost rebellious to vote Democrat in some way. Because Joe Biden makes me feel rebellious. So it's interesting how they've made that pop culture kind of shift where that's the cool part. Because really, if you think about it, punk rock and roll, what would that be? That would be saying, I'm going to vote Republican amongst your liberal friends at a high school. We're way out on a tangent here. Great piece by Rich Lowry, which seems like it's echoing what I said just yesterday on the program. I'm not going to be one of those people that said we came up with it first. But Biden's inane war on shrinkflation only underlines the inflation he caused. And then what we said yesterday, he's talking about shrinkflation. Isn't that Bidenomics? Isn't that inflation? And this piece is great. It's at the New York Post. And basically, it's almost being reported that the White House is looking at ways to sign executive orders to deal with shrinkflation. So can the president say, hey, you have to fill up that bag more Doritos, or you have to keep the same amount. But all that does is prove that there is inflation, because shrinkflation is inflation. It's just talking about the size of the packaging. It's admitting that there's inflation. How about this for sad? Man, we are out of time. Let me take a break. How about this? How sad is this? Almost a third of Americans say the First Amendment goes too far. The survey, conducted with 1,000 Americans about their opinions on free speech and expression. The survey found that when it comes to whether people are able to freely express their views, over 2/3 of respondents said they believed America was headed in the wrong direction. But they said it goes too far because it shouldn't hurt your opinion. This has been a long time coming. We saw it on college campuses about a decade ago, where we started hearing that words are akin to violence. All right, last break. Then we are going to move fast. Stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Some last minute comments from a viewer. I'm a registered Democrat that always votes anything but Democrat. Fair enough. How about this one? And I think a lot of people can relate to the giveaways and the things like that would make them vote. And then the old, who would you want to have a beer with? Or in this case, from a viewer, full disclosure, I'm embarrassed to say, but I recall voting for the first time. And sadly, I believe I may have voted for the most, quote, attractive man. Thank goodness, with aging comes wisdom. Yeah, it goes back, and I'm not saying this was the vote, but right where they always talked about the Kennedy-Nixon debate with the looks, when that became more important. So that's an interesting point. Thank you to our lady viewer. Next, Ken's having a little fun with me because this is funny. Ken, I read one of his comments earlier, and I said the easiest way to get on this program with your comment is to make a compliment about the show. I was joking, Ken. You don't have to do this every time. I would love to hear from people with different opinions, but Ken has a great point here. Well, after he gets past the patting me on the back. Frank, you're a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you, Ken. And your good looks is only exceeded by your great taste in women. And now the real fun begins. Thank you, Ken. The Dems plan: indoctrinate our kids, vote at 16, illegal immigrants get them citizenship, buy votes, forgive student loans, dumb down the electorate, legalize pot. Thanks, Ken. And that's so funny. You made me laugh hard. All right. Finally, do we have time? Yes. New York Democrats rush the new congressional maps. Basically, what it's going to do is help reelect Tom Suozzi, who just won, and Jamal Bowman. Bowman, best known for pulling the fire alarm. But there is... Well, and they could vote very soon. The vote could happen today. Who knows? Maybe it's happened since we've been on the show. It doesn't change a lot, but it does change it. Governor Hochul defending the change. It is a prerogative of the legislature to vote yes or no, and if they vote no, they have an alternative, so they're wrong in their assessment. Whatever. But there is a great piece, and I'm out of time. Go to the New York Post if you want to find out more about the lines, and it's from Lee Zeldin, who ran for governor, of course. Democrats failed to take the House, so they're rewriting the rules with a toxic map proposal. It is a great piece. He calls them sore losers and what this is doing. Oh, one last thing. No, I'm out of time. Advocates are now pushing for term limits for New York State office holders. Boy, getting them to vote to boot themselves out is going to be tough, but it would limit state legislators to 16 years and change terms from 2 years to 4. The bill would also limit statewide officials to 3 4-year terms. Out of time. Thank you for all the comments. What a great show this morning. Join us tomorrow, and we'll be back at 7 a.m. for Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox.